Mike and Tom are registered with Stewart Partners Global Advisory LLC.
Common Sense Finance with Mike Wiginton and Tom Farrell of HL Wiginton Capital Management, an independent investment and financial planning firm in downtown Jasper. Mike is a chartered financial analyst charter holder, and Tom is a certified financial planner professional. They are here to discuss and give their thoughts on current financial and economic matters. Now, with Common Sense Finance, here are Mike and Tom.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of Common Sense Finance. This is Thomas Farrell, I'm Mike Wiginton, and today if I were going to put a title on this podcast, it would be something along the lines of myths, demons, and fuel prices. And so kind of what makes me think about it in that regard is there's a lot of talk about, has been a lot of talk about gasoline prices, although today is the 12th of August, 11th of August, something like that.
11th.
Yeah, thereabouts. And so we're actually today, we're kind of fuel prices have come way off the highs for sure, yes. and we'll see where that goes. But I always think about all the reasons, and it's so hard. It's almost impossible to get accurate information because you're dealing with people that have to write articles for a living, and so they've got to produce that volume. And if it sounds good, there's the old saying. What was the old saying in media? If it bleeds, it leads. And so that they've got to generate looks, clicks and views and capture people's attention. And so there's no question. And we talked about that for years. This goes so far back, but nonetheless, all the ideas and the conversation about why fuel prices are where they are, and so much of it's just wrong. You're thinking, come on, people. And so I know you have some particular thoughts. We've been talking about things like refining capacity and what's caused those problems. And so why don't you just get us into that?
Let's start out with what happened a couple of years ago. We went into a pandemic-induced recession. And at that time, about 3 million barrels of refining capacity a day, now this is globally, a day went offline. So they no longer had the capacity to process that oil.
And I think about a third of that was in the United States, a third of that.
A big chunk of that is in the United States. So, and a lot of that's probably driven by demand was down at that point, and maybe they didn't want to invest the capital in those facilities because no one going forward that, electric vehicles are being pushed really hard. This is the ESG movement, and they're just not going to, it just really doesn't make sense to invest a lot of money in that area right now. We're going to run with what we have. So that's going back a couple of years. Now, fast forward to this year, and the refiners that are running right now, and I'll use Marathon Oil and Phillips 66 are the two biggest in the country. They're saying they've been running at near full capacity for almost the whole year here. So what that does is, obviously they're trying their best to meet demand. They don't want to run at full capacity. They want to be able to maintain their equipment, their facilities, and they're not going to. And I think again they're not going to put a lot of capital into these facilities because they want to be able to get a return on that capital eventually, and they don't think they're going to be able to. So
I mentioned to you that I watched. It was on Bloomberg. I watched an interview. This was like just a few weeks ago. I mean, this is really recent, with the CEO of Chevron, and it was toward the end of the interview. And he came from refining. That was his background, and he said that, in his opinion, there would never be a new refinery built in the United States. Yeah, not another one.
And that makes sense based on the climate we're in now. But so because of that, they've been running at about 95% capacity. So they're backing it down. I think they've said they're backing it down or have in recent days to 91% capacity, which is still running pretty much wide open. Yep. Yeah, they don't want to run at that pace. And that's in the face of, based on the latest data from fuel consumption use in July, was down 8%. So that's a big drop.
That's right.
In the summer months when people are going and doing stuff. So the Biden administration has been releasing about 1 million barrels of oil a day from the reserve to try to alleviate high gas prices.
But that's a joke.
Yeah, that's
another myth that people
they could release 20 million barrels a day. If
you're producing all you can produce.
Yeah, if we can't refine
gasoline.
that and turn it into gasoline, it doesn't do any good. Yeah. So, you know, they want to say that's why the gas prices have come down, and a lot of people say that. And there's a few smart people out there that, well, that's not really what's happening here. What's happening here is people are not driving as much. Demand has come down.
Oil prices have come down a bit.
Oil prices have
actually
come down.
quite a bit from off the high. But.
And so what you're seeing now, and I think the last I saw, and this is just one example, is $3.50 is the gas station.
By the way, and we'll get Oliver Stone to flash them up, we have charts of wholesale gasoline prices, chart for gasoline prices. We have a chart for oil prices, so we can put those charts up there to make your point.
And also, if anybody's interested, I'm getting a lot of this information from Wall Street Journal article from August the 6th. So it's talking about refining capacity.
Well, you know, along those lines, and we say this all the time, and you know, we got to keep compliance happy, is that this is easy to find. This information is not, I mean, just the basic information is easy to find. You get into things that are market oriented, and some of the information, you need to, probably requires a bit of a understanding about how certain markets work, but, you know, not all of it. I think, you know, any of our viewers that, you know, in command of this information, I mean, they see this easily. Yeah,
and the other thing that came up in the article I thought was interesting is both of these companies, Marathon and Phillips 66, said they're going to be taking a pretty good chunk of their refining capacity offline in the second half of the year, later on in the year, to do much needed maintenance because they've been running at breakneck speeds for the last 6 to 12 months. They haven't been able to do that. So, you know, we'll see what that does. That's obviously going to affect gasoline supply, which, by the way, oil supplies have actually increased in the last month.
Off of historic lows, though.
Off of historic lows.
They're still historically low.
Yes, they're still low. But while that has started to trend back up, gasoline reserves have dropped over the last month. So, that again goes back to, hey, it's great that they're starting to ramp back up. And I think you read some things where drilling activity and exploration has gone up.
Drilling activity's picked up. But look, folks, and when I go to sleep at night, the last thing I say is, remember ESG, okay? That's the last thing. And you can't get over this. We have turned away from fossil fuels in this country. The largest banks have said they're not going to lend to industries engaged in fossil fuels. How you can do that, I don't know how you can say that. It seems like our basic banking laws would prohibit that. And so it's no wonder that our exploration, the CapEx, had fallen to below 2010 levels. It's no wonder. When you quit drilling and you're still using the product, okay, you're still using your supplies of the product, but you quit drilling, exploring for new reserves, guess what happens to your inventories? They go down. If you're surprised by this, you shouldn't be driving anyway, okay? You should be confined. And so, that is, you've got multiple factors. There's no one, but if that is as major a piece of the problem as anything. This was going on before any Russian-Ukraine war. And if you're going to be up in arms about gasoline prices, then you've got to be up in arms about this idea that people have turned their back on, and I'm talking about certain powers that be, like the banks, like the finance industry, certain parts of the finance industry have said, anti-fossil fuels, we're cutting out to this zero carbon world, whatever that means, and however they're able to measure it. That's another podcast, of course.
A lot of those, they're starting to get some pushback, and a lot of them are kind of changing their tune a little bit, or softening up a little bit on that, because it's going to affect their business. But we'll see how that.
Well, you cannot, not you, not me, not anybody I know that watches this podcast. Not anybody I know and there's people that I don't even have an idea that are receiving this podcast, so I don't know them, and so I exclude them from this comment. But no one that I know can live like they live without the use in a big way of fossil fuels.
Oh, for
They
sure.
cannot live their lifestyle without it. So we'll see how that goes and where gas prices are a year from now. won't we?
That's the thing. We'll see how all this, because gas prices. I mean, being able to get around, being able to haul goods and services around, that's the direct relation to the economy and what's going on with the economy and how much it can grow, and in turn stock prices. So
That's correct. It affects every element of every issue that we deal with here on a daily basis.
Going forward toward the end of the year, keep an eye on gas prices. Hopefully, they won't go crazy again. But based on some of the things we're reading, we may be in for, certainly I don't think, based on this information anyway, that gas prices are going to go down a whole lot more, and they could certainly start to go back up. So
But certainly forecast maybe some volatility.
sure.
Okay, is that the last
That's
word?
it.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Understand.